There are moments in every life when the ordinary fabric of experience feels as though it has been struck by thunder. A sudden awareness ripples through you, not gently, but with the force of something ancient, older than the mountains, wilder than the wind, more mysterious than anything the world has taught you. Tonight, I want you to step into such a moment with me. Imagine that what you thought of as your steady life is only a surface, and beneath it lies a trembling, luminous ground you've barely touched. I am not here to lecture or merely to pass ideas across a desk. I am here to press against the veil of what you believe you know, and to invite you to glimpse what stirs beyond it. The question that haunts every soul. Why are we so afraid of our own true power? We are trained to imagine power as something outside ourselves. Monarchs, generals, titans of industry, or even the gods of myth. We picture crowns, armies, wealth, or political might. But that is only the mask of power, its public costume. The true force rests not in palaces or parliaments, but in the depths within you. And that is where dread arises, for what is far more terrifying than a tyrant on the horizon is the realization that the monstrous and the marvelous both dwell inside your own soul. The greatest fear is not that the world will overpower you, but that your own inner fire will awaken, asking you to live as more than a shadow of yourself. Perhaps you have felt it in flashes, a dream so vivid it cracked the shell of your waking mind, or a moment of creativity so raw you scarcely recognized yourself, as though a god or a demon had seized your hand. These instants unsettle us. Civilization, proud of its rationality, tells us to dismiss them as excess, as nerves, as fantasies. Yet what if they are not aberrations, but invitations? What if every tremor before a painting, every shiver in a dream, is your undiscovered self calling you back to the source of your own being? I have wandered the labyrinth of the psyche long enough to see the pattern. People resist these moments because they threaten the order of the small inherited world the ego clings to. That fragile island of identity knows that awakening deeper forces is to risk transformation, to risk being seen, even by oneself, without disguise. The old myths spoke of heroes descending into the underworld before they could ascend. Power is never gifted to the uninitiated. It is earned by facing the serpent at the threshold, by bearing the heat of one's own depths. And so the fear we feel is not weakness. It is the sign that we stand before the doorway of becoming. Before we go deeper, let me turn directly to you, the listener on the other side of this voice. Take a moment and share in the comments. Where are you listening from? And what time is it where you are? Let us see the map of this strange fellowship spread across the world. And while you're here, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the stories we're unfolding together on Carl Jung Stories Unveiled. This channel is not simply content. It is a pilgrimage we take as one voice, one community, into the unexplored regions of the soul. Now, return with me into the current of this story. You carry within you both the spark and the shadow, the promise and the peril. The opening thunder you feel is the signal that you are standing at the edge of the forest, gazing across a chasm toward a glowing castle, the image of your own potential. What holds you back is the serpent of fear, waiting to test whether you will step forward or retreat. This is the paradox of power. It terrifies us not because it belongs to others, but because it belongs to us. And as we cross deeper into this labyrinth, we will find that the language of dreams and symbols, of serpents and castles, is not decoration, but the map itself. It will guide us into the heart of why power must be feared, before it can be embraced. The thunder has sounded. The flame is stirring. You have taken the first step into the mythic ground of your own story. As we move forward, the dream imagery will begin to speak. The abyss, the serpent, the shimmering castle, all waiting to reveal why what we most long for is also what we most resist. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a dream. Before you is a vast forest. Behind it, an abyss so dark it swallows sound. Across the chasm rises a castle lit by golden fire, its towers impossibly high. Just as you step forward, a serpent coils upward from the depths, its eyes blazing with both terror and invitation. You wake trembling, your heart pounding, not knowing whether you've seen an enemy or a messenger. This dream, as strange as it seems, is not merely personal. It is archetypal. The abyss, the castle, the serpent. These are not private fantasies, but universal symbols. They appear across cultures and epochs because they express the timeless drama of power, shadow, and transformation. The abyss is the gulf between who you are and who you might become. The castle is your hidden potential, the promise of wholeness and strength that waits across the void. And the serpent, both guardian and gateway, is the figure that tests whether you will turn back or risk the perilous crossing. Power in the psyche is never pure light. It is dual, both creative and destructive, both medicine and poison. The serpent embodies this tension. To deny it is to remain exiled from the castle. To confront it is to risk being consumed by what you awaken. This is why societies teach us to fear the darkness. From childhood, we are warned not to dig too deep, not to wander too far into imagination, not to question too boldly. Education, family, and even religion often whisper the same caution. Stay safe in the village. Avoid the serpent. Ignore the call. But safety comes at a cost. To live in fear of the abyss is to remain half alive, bound by familiar chains, never knowing what brilliance or wholeness lies across the chasm. Jung recognized that such dreams are not random. They are maps of the unconscious, guiding us toward both our wounds and our gifts. To see a serpent is not a nightmare, but a summons. It signals that something coiled and potent stirs within, waiting for recognition. The castle of potential cannot be reached by bypassing fear. It must be crossed through fear. This is why so many recoil from their own brilliance. To stand at the threshold of greatness feels like standing before a beast whose bite might destroy you. The poets have always intuited this. One Spanish poet once wrote, "I am not I. I am this one walking beside me whom I do not see." Such lines remind us that our identities are layered, that another self waits just beyond the margins of awareness. Dreams make this visible. They show us the double, the hidden twin that is not a stranger, but the other half of who we are meant to become. And yet, in our rational age, we often dismiss dreams as mere noise in the nervous system. We tell ourselves they mean nothing. But what if they are not noise but signal? What if the trembling you feel before a dream's strange imagery is the brush of your undiscovered self, knocking on the door of consciousness? What if the serpent is not there to devour you but to force you to grow? Think of your own life. How many times have you felt an impulse rising, a creative urge, a sudden insight, a powerful emotion, only to push it down out of fear of being seen, judged, or changed? That suppression is the serpent's bite. Every time you retreat, the abyss widens, the castle recedes. But the opposite is also true. Every time you dare to lean into the image, to write it down, to reflect on its meaning, to live as though it carries truth. The bridge begins to appear. Dreams, then, are not escapes from reality, but rehearsals for it. They place before us the figures we must face, the questions we must answer, the choices we must live. The abyss is the fear of change. The serpent is the force of transformation. The castle is the self that waits to be born. To deny the dream is to deny your own becoming. As the story unfolds, keep listening for your own symbols. They may not come as serpents or castles. Perhaps they arrive as a faceless pursuer in the night, as a sudden fall through endless air, as a child who whispers truths you've forgotten. Whatever the form, the principle is the same. Symbols are invitations. They call you across the threshold. And yet, we must remember, symbols are not abstract puzzles to be solved. They are lived realities. They demand not analysis alone, but courage. You cannot defeat the serpent by clever interpretation. You must enter its lair, feel its heat, bear its gaze. Transformation requires not distance, but encounter. As we leave this section, hold the image of the dream close. The abyss, the serpent, the castle. These are not characters in someone else's story. They are the inner architecture of your own psyche. To fear them is natural, but to engage them is necessary. The serpent does not block the way. It is the way. And as we move forward, we will see why facing this shadow is inseparable from freedom, responsibility, and the burden of authentic choice. There comes a point when standing before the serpent is no longer about interpretation, but about decision. To cross the threshold into the castle of your own potential is to confront the shadow, that hidden twin who carries everything you have rejected, denied, or feared in yourself. The shadow is not just anger, jealousy, or aggression. It also holds your strength, your creativity, and your forbidden longings. To turn toward it is to risk everything you thought you were. To turn away is to remain imprisoned in a smaller life. This is the descent, the journey downward, where the ego begins to tremble because it senses its limits. Jung insisted that power is discovered in darkness, not in comfort. Think of ancient myths, heroes who descend into the underworld, shamans who journey into night, knights who wander until they earn the grail. The pattern is clear. Before ascent comes descent. Before wholeness comes disintegration. And the ego resists. That fragile island of identity knows that if it allows deeper powers to emerge, its carefully built order may collapse. This is why we cling to familiar chains, even when they cause suffering. Better, the ego argues, to remain miserable in what we know than to risk the terror of transformation. But avoidance always carries a price. Suppressed anger festers into bitterness. Rejected desire disguises itself as passivity. Buried creativity erupts as depression or restlessness. What we exile does not vanish. It returns in symptoms, compulsions, and crises. The shadow, ignored, becomes a tyrant. The very parts of ourselves we fear are the ones that enslave us when denied. To be free is not to destroy the shadow, but to reconcile with it, to learn its language, to claim its energy as your own. Here lies the burden of freedom. To awaken true power is to accept responsibility. You can no longer blame others, fate, or circumstance for every twist of your life. To become conscious of your depth is to realize that your choices matter, that your words carry weight, that the way you live is an answer to existence itself. This realization is exhilarating and terrifying. It feels like standing on a mountaintop where the horizon has no end, and the air is so thin it burns your lungs. The temptation is always to retreat, to run back into the valley where the air is thick and the view is small. Yet the call of freedom will not vanish. It will return in dreams, in conflicts, in longings, until you face it. Think of those moments in your own life when you glimpsed your potential and then recoiled. Perhaps you sabotaged a success, declined an opportunity, or silenced your own brilliance because it felt too dangerous. This is the paradox of freedom. We want it and fear it at the same time. To live in freedom is to carry the weight of authenticity, to know that you are answerable not just to society, but to your own soul. The myths understood this weight. In the story of the Grail, the young knight stumbles upon the sacred chalice but fails to ask the healing question because he does not yet know himself. He must wander through trial and failure until he learns. The Grail is never seized as a prize. It is received as destiny when the seeker is ready to bear it. Likewise, your true power is not simply claimed. It demands that you first endure the night sea voyage, the wrestling with angels, the descent into uncertainty. Only then can you hold it without destruction. It is worth remembering that initiation always involves a death and a rebirth. The ego must die so that the self can be born. This is not an annihilation, but a transformation. The old order dissolves, making way for something larger, wiser, and more whole. And yes, it feels like dying, because every attachment, every illusion, every comfortable pattern is called into question. But beyond the death waits a birth, a new life not governed by fear, but by authenticity. So many who come to the edge of this descent turn back. They invent rationalizations, retreat into distractions, or numb themselves with addictions. Anything to avoid the abyss. But avoidance is only postponement. The summons remains. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. To choose descent is to choose responsibility. It is to accept that freedom is not a gift without cost, but a burden worth carrying. As this section closes, remember, the descent is not punishment, but preparation. It is the crucible in which your small self is burned away so that your larger self can emerge. The serpent does not block your path. It demands your courage. And when you are willing to face it, to carry the burden of freedom, you begin the transformation that no longer belongs only to you but radiates into the lives of others. In the next section, we will see how true power does not end with conquest, but unfolds as humility, creativity, and service, expressions of a soul that has survived descent and is ready to create anew. When the ego has endured its descent and returned with scars, something unexpected happens. The face of power changes. It is no longer the raw force of conquest or the intoxicating surge of dominance. True power, born from shadow and fire, expresses itself in humility, creativity, and service. The one who has met the serpent and survived does not boast. They walk quietly, carrying an inner certainty, aware of both their limits and their gifts. This humility is not weakness. It is the recognition that power is never possession, but participation. You are not the master of the forces that move through you. You are their vessel, their voice, their instrument. To become whole is to live as a conduit for something larger than the ego, something wiser than ambition. The Greeks had a word for this state, enthusiasmos, to be filled with a god, the artist at the height of creation, the healer at the bedside, the lover lost in the gaze of another. Each is seized by a current beyond themselves. Creativity becomes the clearest expression of this power. Every time you bring forth something new, a painting, a melody, a garden, a kind word, you are giving shape to the life of the self. The world tells us creativity is reserved for geniuses, but Jung would remind us, every soul is a work of art, and every day an opportunity to create. It is not limited to poets or musicians. You create in the way you speak, the risks you take, the boundaries you draw, the tenderness you extend. To live creatively is to embody power without aggression, to heal without dominating, to transform without coercing. Humility and creativity also ripple outward. When an individual becomes more whole, their very presence transforms the collective. A healed shadow within one person reduces the violence of the collective shadow. A single awakened voice can shift the tone of a family, a community, even a culture. Think of it this way. Each soul that embraces its true power adds light to the dark woods of the collective unconscious. Your individuation is not a private indulgence. It is a public gift. The alchemists understood this. They spoke of the opus magnum, the great work, not as a selfish pursuit of gold, but as the transmutation of matter into spirit, the healing of the world through inner transformation. The lead of suffering becomes the gold of meaning, and that gold is not hoarded but offered. Likewise, your transformation is not for yourself alone. When you integrate your shadow, when you live creatively, when you embody humility, you are serving not only your destiny, but humanity's. And yet, society often resists this kind of power. It is disruptive. A humble, creative person does not fit the mold of consumerism or competition. The world rewards noise, but true power works quietly, deeply, reshaping the ground rather than the surface. This is why the path can feel lonely. Those who dare to descend are often ridiculed or rejected. But every age has its initiates. Those who refuse to let fear dictate their limits. Those who risk the solitude of authenticity in order to bear the flame of renewal. At this point in the journey, you might notice signs in your own life. Recurring dreams, sudden creative impulses, dissatisfaction with old patterns, an ache for something beyond the surface. These are not distractions. They are invitations. They signal that the self is stirring, that you are being called to live with deeper fidelity to your own soul. If you ignore them, they may return as restlessness, anxiety, or depression. If you answer them, they may unfold as inspiration, connection, and a new sense of meaning. The question then is not whether you have power, but how you choose to express it. Will it erupt destructively, as shadow denied, or will it flow creatively, as shadow integrated? Humility keeps the ego from inflating. Creativity channels energy into life-giving forms. Service anchors power in love rather than domination. This is the triad of true power: humble, creative, and devoted to the whole. As we bring this section to a close, keep this image in mind. Power is not a torch you hold above others, but a flame you tend at the center of your being. Its light warms you and those near you, not by force, but by presence. And yet the story is not complete. To embody humility and creativity is already transformative, but the final revelation of Jung's vision lies ahead. The spiral of endless growth and the return of power as surrender. Let us move into the last stage, where the journey comes full circle, unveiling power not as conquest, but as communion with the depths of life itself. Every myth tells us the journey is not a straight line, but a spiral. You do not climb the mountain once and for all. You circle back again and again, each time at a higher turn. You descend into darkness, return with a spark, then descend again. Individuation is not a single achievement, but a lifelong rhythm of death and rebirth, contraction and expansion, confusion and clarity. This spiral is the architecture of transformation, the way the psyche deepens its own story. Many people fear this endlessness. They ask, will I ever arrive? Will I ever rest? But the truth is, the psyche is inexhaustible. There is no final plateau, only deeper layers of mystery. Each cycle is not a failure of progress, but an invitation to wholeness at a greater level of awareness. Even setbacks, relapses into old patterns, or returns to shadow are not regressions but rehearsals, opportunities to integrate more fully what was once left behind. At the heart of this spiral lies the final revelation. True power is not control, but surrender. It is not about bending the world to your will, but about becoming a vessel for what wants to be born through you. You are less than you thought, unable to command the forces of life, and more than you imagined, the meeting place where those forces find expression. Power flows like breath, like wind, like water. You do not possess it, you participate in it. This is why Jung spoke of individuation not as inflation of the ego, but as its transcendence. To awaken true power is to live beyond the ego's endless hunger for validation, beyond the fear of failure or rejection. It is to stand in your own center and say simply, I am. That statement is not arrogance. It is alignment. It means you have faced the serpent, crossed the abyss, and entered the castle of your own self. And yet, the story does not end with you alone in the castle. Every myth insists the hero must return to the village, carrying the treasure for the world. Power unused, power hoarded, becomes poison. Power offered becomes blessing. The flame you carry is not just for yourself. It is meant to light others in the dark wood of the collective unconscious. Your wholeness becomes medicine for families, communities, and cultures. The healing of the personal shadow is the beginning of the healing of the collective. This return is not easy. The world may resist your transformation. Old friends may not understand. Institutions may ridicule or even punish. Yet your presence itself becomes testimony. To live authentically is to remind others of what they have denied in themselves. Your light becomes both a mirror and a challenge, but it also becomes an anchor of hope. For every soul that awakens, a new possibility opens for the whole of humanity. So let me speak plainly. To be afraid of your true power is to be afraid of your own divinity. Within you burns the spark of creation itself, the image of the infinite stamped upon the soul. We fear it because it demands responsibility, because it calls for sacrifice, because it threatens the safety of smallness. But what we call fear is often only the birth pangs of the soul laboring to reveal its own nature. Do not despise these contractions. They are the signs that something greater is being born. As you listen to these words, notice what stirs in you. Perhaps resistance, perhaps longing, perhaps confusion. All of it belongs. All of it is part of the spiral. To live in relation to your true power is not to eliminate fear, but to walk with it, to let it be the guardian of thresholds. Each fear you face becomes the doorway to deeper wholeness. Each surrender you make opens you to a wider horizon of meaning. The spiral will call you again and again. Each time you descend, you will meet the serpent in a new form. Each time you return, you will bring back more light. This is the rhythm of becoming. This is the great work of the soul. And the more you walk it, the more you discover that your life is not isolated, but woven into a larger pattern, a mandala where every story echoes every other, where your healing contributes to the healing of the world. Now the journey reaches its close, and yet its true beginning. You stand at the center of the labyrinth, flame in hand. The path ahead is uncertain, the night vast, the risks real. But you are not powerless. You are not alone. The flame within you is both your own and greater than you, both fragile and indestructible. To live in relation to it is to live as yourself, whole and unreserved. That is Jung's final revelation. That power worth having is the power to become yourself fully and to offer that self as light to the world. The journey we have traced together does not close with certainty, but with invitation. Jung's voice, echoing across decades, does not hand us a map of final answers. Instead, it leaves us with a compass, an orientation toward depth, toward wholeness, toward the mystery at the center of our own lives. If you have listened this far, something within you has already responded. Perhaps it is only a whisper. Perhaps it is a trembling. Perhaps it is the sudden recognition that the serpent in your own dreams is not an enemy, but a teacher. That recognition is the seed of transformation. To live in relation to your true power is not to conquer life, but to participate in it. The ego dreams of control, of mastery, of being untouchable. But the self knows a different way. True power is not found in possession, but in surrender. Surrender to creativity, to vulnerability, to the call of meaning. This surrender is not defeat. It is alignment with the current of life itself. Like a river that shapes the valley through which it flows, your authentic power reshapes the world simply by being lived. And yet, the path is not free of cost. Fear will return again and again because the spiral of growth has no end. Old patterns will tug at you. Familiar shadows will reappear in new disguises. You will be tempted to retreat, to shrink back into the village of small certainties. But each return of fear is also an opportunity, a new threshold, a new descent, a new chance to claim the treasure waiting in the dark. Remember this: fear is not a signal to stop, but a reminder that you are standing at the doorway of becoming. In practical terms, the work is simple, though never easy. Write down your dreams, even the strange and troubling ones. Listen to your body, the fatigue, the excitement, the cravings, the resistance. Create in whatever form is yours. Words, gestures, gardens, conversations. Risk saying no when habit tells you to say yes, or yes when fear urges you to refuse. Walk in nature and hear the voices that speak without words. Sit with your longing, your grief, your joy, and let them shape you. These are not small acts. They are the rituals of individuation, the daily practices by which power becomes lived truth. And remember, you do not walk this path alone. Every person who has dared the descent before you walks with you now, silently, invisibly, as part of a vast fellowship of seekers. Your struggles echo theirs. Your courage strengthens theirs. Your light extends beyond your own life into the collective fabric of humanity. The world does not need more domination, more conquest, more noise. It needs wholeness. It needs souls willing to descend, to face the serpent, to cross the abyss, to carry back the flame. So let this be your blessing and your charge. Do not be afraid of your fear. Do not despise your longing. Do not silence the voice that calls you deeper. Your true power is not a threat, but a gift. Not for you alone, but for all who live in the shadow of unawakened possibility. Live in relation to your own depths. Offer your creativity freely. Let your life become the testimony that wholeness is possible. When you do, you will discover that the final revelation is not an ending at all, but a beginning. The moment when you stand at the center of your own being, light in hand, and know beyond doubt, I am. And in that simple declaration lies the power to transform not only yourself, but the world.